I had to say that to get a little upbeat before I introduce Mr. Don Burns. Russ is great at cheering people up. I had a video presentation all made up showing the cabin in the woods. Some funny situations from all the trips and so on. But it's getting late, I'm not going to show them. The one thought, it's going to be hard for me to do this, and the kids have been needling me for 6 months in this. They say, you know, the old man's going to get up there, the old tough guy, and he's going to cry all over, and that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. I have a sinus condition that problems. First, before I thank people, there's a lot of people to thank. The first thought that crosses my mind, and I don't know why it did, is that schools all over the country are having trouble finding coaches. The best young men, and there's the best young men that I've ever known are in this room right now, are lawyers, doctors, salesmen, businessmen. And I'm wondering why there aren't more young coaches who devote their lives to coaching. And I think that if any of those people who are in a position to make a decision could have been here tonight, they would change their mind. I have never applied for another job other than coaching since I got out of college. Of course, I wouldn't have got it anyhow. It didn't make a difference. But I used to needle Bill Duchamp, which is fun to do, when he quit coaching and became athletic director, which is a big promotion. No, it didn't. And I think he, down deep, realizes that the best job in the world, in my mind, is what I've been doing the last 35 years. And I wish I could keep doing it forever. It makes me feel bad when coaches like Russ Sumka, who was one of the best young coaches in the area, stops coaching. Thank God for Quit, who's still hanging in there, even though he does look like a striped blimp in that uniform. Quit is a good baseball man. And Quit and I know, we talk, say, Quit, the second best feeling in the world. Where is Quit? I can't see his name. Second best feeling in the world is hitting that solid line drive and getting your hands out in front. And now that we're in our old age, we have decided it's number one. We both have good memories. I talked to my wife a lot lately. We looked at old movies and so on, and we say, you know, I keep telling her, I can't remember when the Burns kids were little, and she always says that's because you were never here when they were little, which is true. I was out playing 10 games a week with Tommy Wingeter, John Hermanick, and the rest of the guys from that group, who I still refer to as my boys. I see them now in an advanced state of decay. Some of them have copied my hairdo. I love them as much now as I did then. We had some great times. I mean, great times. And all the stories that you heard were true. These guys didn't make these stories up. I've been known to use the word jag occasionally. What the crap has occasionally crossed my mind. My whole varsity team is here tonight, and I would like them to stand up. A group of the finest young men that you will ever meet. Up. And you could talk to Buzz Bennett if he's back there. Is Buzz back there? Yeah, whenever Buzz makes a ground ball, I call him Buffy instead of Buzz. And he smiles at me, or Gertrude. But I think he understands that that it's not meant to be nasty. These boys have all heard stories about some of you sitting here. And they think I make up these stories. Mike Oates, for example, John Hermanick, Tommy Wingeter. These kids have all heard stories about these people. And they are real people. And I have to fight back a little bit. I've got enough Russ Sumka stories, for example, to ruin his marriage. Because his marriage split. He mentioned earlier that I introduced him to his wife, found his house, and all the things I did for him. Take a good look at his oldest son. He's a big kid with lots of his own hair. Mike Oates really did all the things that these kids have heard. John Hermanick really did these things. We're talking here about top talent. John Hermanick is in the Glenbard West Hall of Fame as a baseball player. He went all the way up with the Cubs. Should have stuck with him in the big leagues. The kids in the team called him the siege gun when he was on our team, and whenever we'd get in a tight spot, the guys in the team would say, "Coach, don't you think it's time we roll out the siege gun?" And we rolled John out, and the other team gave up. Probably the best story to indicate the talent that John had. We had a game scheduled. The coach called me from Downers Grove, a coach named Wiley, whose son now teaches at Glenbard. And he said, "I'm running an all-star team, and I will like to play your team on the 4th of July, but I will only play you if you will not pitch Hermanick." I said, "Well, we play 10 games a week anyhow. I'll pitch somebody else." He said, "You promise we will not play you if you..." This was an all-star team. I said, "I will not pitch Hermanick. I'll pitch him the day before." So we went over to Downers Grove in the old Legion Field, and they had a big 4th of July crowd. And Wiley was one of these coaches that dresses in front of a mirror, you know, flat stomach, ugly body. And they were beating us, and he was, he had all the fancy moves. And we went into the 7th inning, and we got the bases loaded. We were losing 3-0, and I put John in the pinch hit. Well, as soon as John walked toward the plate, Wiley came running out of the dugout, protesting. He told me up. He said, "This kid can't do this. The coach promised me he would not use Hermanick." I said, "No, wait a minute." I said, "I would not pitch him. He's not going to pitch. He's going to bat." "No, he can't bat." I said, "Wait a minute. He's going to bat. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to quit?" And he went storming back to their bench. Well, beyond the left fielder, they had a cornfield. and John ripped one into the cornfield. 3 runs scored, tied the game up. Now Wiley really came out, came running out to the mound and called in all these all-stars. And said, now I know Burnsy's going to try and squeeze in the winning run, and he whispered to them all how to stop. And then in the second pitch, we squeezed in the winning run and left him, and I loved it. I still remember it. And every time I see his kid, I feel like saying, tell Daddy John Herman says hello. Because I'm sure he wakes up in the night in the cold sweat going, my God, where is Harmonic? The next, I have to fight back a little bit with Dick Watkins. Dick Watkins came to Glenbard as a senior the year after John graduated. If he would have been there a year sooner, I would have been the greatest coach in the history of the state. Dick Watkins is the premier performer and competitor that I've ever met. The first time I met him in the hall, I said, I hear you're pretty good, kid. Are you good? And he said, yeah, I'm good. I said, well, we'll see. Well, the first game he pitched a 1-hit shutout, and the next game he pitched a no-hitter. He went to the University of Denver, broke their records and so on, and he's here tonight. He flew in, and I love Dick Watkins. I always have. And if you had a game you wanted to win, that's who you want pitching for. After Watkins came Glenbard's Paul Bunyan, Mike Oates. Mike Oates is the biggest, strongest pitcher that I've ever seen. I talked to an old scout who was scouting him, and he said that he had scouted Bob Feller when he was a kid, and Oates threw harder. The difference was that Feller occasionally threw a strike, and Oates was responsible for batting helmets. I think he was banned for life from the Pony League. He skulled some kid who was in the hospital for weeks. And it was awesome to watch this boy throw. I didn't have radar guns then, but if he didn't throw 95 or 100 miles an hour, nobody ever did. And he had an Ozarkite look to him, like the next pitch could go anywhere. And I tell the kids in the team this, and they don't believe it, but we went over to play Lions in a slight snowstorm. And the guys who were on the team will remember this was a Saturday morning around 9:30 or 10. And Lions, when you saw Oates warm up, you thought, oh, geez, because arms and legs were flying all over the place, and the kid was an absolute bruiser. Well, the first kid came up begrudgingly, and the first pitch almost hit him in the face. He fell over backwards, and it hit him on the hand. And on a 30-degree day, he was screaming in pain, and they massaged his hand, and the umpire went, foul tip. So they put the same kid back up. Well, the next pitch hit him in the point of the elbow. Well, no, the guys on our bench are laughing harder than you are, because they knew that mayhem was coming because Mike's control was off. Well, they revived this kid and put him down at first base, and the coach decided, we better bunt. The next kid squared around a bunt. In those days it said L-Y-O-N-S, and Mike's fastball hit him on the Y. He had his bat up and it missed the bat, and this kid went down like he'd been hit by a truck. They dragged him off. Now our guys are hysterical by this time. They dragged this limp body off. And the third kid came up and stood so deep in the batter's box, you could hardly see him. Well, Mike threw a strike by accident. The kid bunted it back to the mound, and he threw it into deep right center for a triple. I can still remember that. The ball, he shot that ball into right center, hardly anybody could hit it. So then we brought another guy in to finish up the game. It was early. But he regularly did things like that. And the funniest thing of all, in PE class, when it rains, you play bombardment, which means they put all the juniors and seniors around the outside of the basketball court, and all the freshmen and sophomores are in the middle. Well, all the ghouls in the junior and senior class knew how hard Mike could throw, so whenever the ball missed a kid, they would throw it over to Mike. And they'd all start giggling, and Mike would run back about 4 steps with a volleyball in this huge fist of his. It looked like a softball. And he would zing one into this pack of terrified freshmen and sophomores. And they would all drop, And the last guy to drop literally got splattered. Some of you remember that. And they had a freshman kid took one in the groin. That was the most awesome sound. This kid is probably a monk right now. It was unbelievable. So if you think I'm making these stories up, and the guys at the varsity think I make them up, Mike's over there and shake hands with him. But not too hard because he'll rip your arm off. Just he went on to professional baseball and did very well. After that, we had Glenn Reynolds, a left-hander who won every game in the league we won. When we won the championship, he won 9 games. A little guy, short armor, couldn't throw real hard. All he did was badly, and Glenn's here tonight. You want Glenn on your team when you want to win the big ball game. And I could go on and on and on. Connie Kowal, who was a sophomore, was a shortstop of the championship team, threw the tying run out of the plate over at Maine East. Just a beautiful experience. Now he's just an assistant business manager with the Cubs. And will no doubt end up running that organization. And I think now he's in charge of outfield replacements, which they need rather badly. But Connie was on the varsity as a sophomore, and he was a little guy, but he was a ball player. And the one thing if you saw these videos, you'd see Russ Sumka when he didn't have any hair. And one of the things I remember is we were going on a Denver trip, and Connie was in my car. Connie, Noel Boldansky was in there, and the whole back of the station wagon was filled with equipment. But Connie could crawl back there, and Russ was following us in his station wagon, and we had a bunch of bottle rockets. And Connie would go back, and I would lower the rear window of my station wagon, and he would shoot bottle rockets at Russ Sumka. Now, he remembers that. Sumka's weaving all over the road, dodging these bottle rockets. So we pulled into Cheyenne or somewhere before we turned south to go to Denver, and Russ pulled up next to us at a red light and was mad. Geez, you guys are trying to kill me back there. And while he was chewing me out, one of the guys rolled a cherry bomb under the driver's seat. And as the light changed, the cherry bomb went off, and we drove away. Russ was really steamed. It was beautiful. The one story I have to tell, most baseball humor is slightly ribald and tends to become a little crude, so I apologize to some of the women in the group. But we went to Denver, and it's boys' night out. If you saw the films, the kids would go out, and they thought I was home plotting strategy the next day. And actually, Jake Vavra and Russie and I were out, and we went to a strip show. Yes, I am. We went to a strip show in Denver, and they had a girl that was the most beautiful girl I'd seen up till then, with the exception of Marge. And they were in a different weight class over there. I had never seen, being from St. George, I had never seen, and still haven't to this day, a stripper take all her clothes off. And I thought she was wonderful. And as she walked to the dressing room, she came by our table, and Jack Rose, the Denver coach, was there, and Jake Vavra and Russ. And Jack Rose is a slick fellow. He's a college coach. Those guys are sharp. And he said, "Young lady, we really appreciated your dance." So she said, "Oh, thank you." And she stopped next to our table. So she was standing there 3 feet away from Russ, who was single at the time. And we asked her every question we could think of. Where'd you get your start? How'd you get into this? And didn't bother her any. And I thought, geez, I'd died and gone to heaven. If the brothers were right, I would have gone blind. But when she left, Russ Sumka looked at me and said, "Did you notice what beautiful eyes she had?" And Jake Vavra said, "She had a stretch mark." A stretch mark. One. Please, one stretch. And I'll never forget it. My idols, the big swingers, were. But the worst one of all, and I have to do this to Russie because he'd be disappointed. Fortunately, his mother isn't here. We were out again one night in Denver while the kids were home, I assume, studying for the game the next day. And we went into a place where they had, the Denver coach said they had exotic dancers. And they had a woman that must have been, I hate to say this at my age, 50-something. And we were about 30 then, and I had hair. And we went in the booth, and of course not only was the woman old and gruesome looking, but she was a hunchback, which is not bad. Unless you're a go-go girl, and the hunchback go-go girls don't make it big. Well, when she got through with her dance, Russ was there. He was living with his mother, and Russie had golden blonde hair then before it got thicker and darker. And being the rookie that he was, he sat in the outside of this curved booth. And his mother had packed his suitcase. He had all new white pants and a fancy white shirt. Well, this old, hunchbacked go-go girl came over to our table and sat on Russ's lap and said, "Hey, big boy, how about buying me a drink?" Well, it was ginger ale or something for $3, which was big money at that time. So Russ, he bought her the drink, and we got out of there as fast as we could. But when we went out in the parking lot, Russ had white pants on. And on the right side of his white pants, there was a huge mark of some kind. A terrible mark. And if I lived to be 500 years old, I can see the golden boy, who was 23, saying, "What's my mother going to say when she sees my white pants? What am I going to tell her?" And he said he was actually near hysterical, waving his arm, saying, "What do you think it is? What do you think it is?" I said, "I don't know, Russ, but your mother ain't going to think it's good no matter what it is." And I actually think he threw those pants away before he went home. And if you think I'm making that up, take a look at it over there. That's all true. It's true. We had more fun on those trips than any human being has ever had before. I have films of us with the Ryan Grovers and Bob Elliott, all the guys, and we just had a ball. The thing that typified it was a night in Memphis. We had a boy from Glenbard South whose mother had seen him play every game he'd ever played in his life. And she called me and said, "I am going on the Florida baseball trip." And I said, "No, lady, you are not going on the Florida baseball trip, or your son will not go." She said, "I have seen every game he's ever played, and I'm going." I said, "No, you're not." So when we arrived in Memphis, I looked over my shoulder the next morning, and there she was. She was in the motel. She actually followed us. But the fathers and I all went in the room, and we were sitting there having a ginger ale. And just as I lifted my glass, I remember saying to the other fathers who were there, "Isn't it nice that we have such good Glenbard West kids that we can relax and don't have to worry about them getting in trouble?" Just as the police sirens went off, the police came rushing in, and our kids were knocking on doors and throwing ice water in the face of the guy who opened the door. Well, and they thought that was funnier than heck, except they went one room too far where Romeo and Juliet were having a little tryst. And when Romeo came to the door, they blasted him, and he came charging out, and we had World War III in the place. It was exciting. We got out of there in one piece. I could tell stories about every player here in the room. I am obligated to raise a glass, at least figuratively, to Jim Nachman, who's no longer with us, Jeff Crick, Bruce Capel, and Ron Frederick, who was in a nursing home very near death from a brain tumor. I went and visited him this afternoon, and if you think you've got problems, you don't. None of us do. And we have to remember them in your prayers and thoughts. It is a tragic story, but life goes on. I would very much like to thank Marge and Nancy. They've been working for so long, so hard. Sometimes it's very frustrating. People don't return cards and so on. We couldn't find people. But I will say out loud what I've said many times to many people. I have never met a finer woman than Nancy Elliott. And she is a queen among human females. She has endured, there are other kinds of females, other than humans. She has endured a tragedy, came through it like a champ, raised her family. She has a wonderful family. Jimmy Elliott is now a star at Denver and will hopefully be in the big leagues one of these days. And if he is, be great. He's broken all the hitting records out of Denver. I would like to go back even further. You know, when you run a summer team without a whole lot of financial backing, you need support from many people. The Glen Ellen American Legion was good to me. And any of you remember the steak fries, the wild steak fries? We went out there one night at 4 o'clock. We had to serve 400 steaks, and we didn't have any groceries. Bob Ellie was laid over in Seattle. We had nobody to cook the steaks, and we pulled it off. It was, that's how we raised the money to run the teams. But Don Russell was sitting here, bless his soul. I think one year he kept track, and he put 4,000 miles on his car just going to baseball games with me. Ed Reingrover's here. Ed and I are brothers. We had more good times. And I have to tell the background of that story. One year we were 2-11. I think this when Connie was on the team and Brett and all those kids. We were 2-11, and we won a game. So Bob Elliott said, hey, we can't go home. We finally won a game. Let's go to my house and we'll have a little party. Well, we went over there for a few cocktails and stayed there till midnight or 1. Well, the next day we won again. We won 9 in a row, by which time we had spent a night at the Roberts' house, the Reingrovers, and most of us were nearing alcoholism by the time that was over with. And we came within 1 game of going downstate with that team, and that was fun, and those people have been friends ever since. Good, solid people. They helped me a lot. I have to give Bill Duchamp. Bill Duchamp is here, and I have to give him a needle a little bit because he can't get back at me right now. People assume that we didn't get along very well because Bill was involved in another sport. And I was involved in the sport. But we had a working relationship when he was athletic director that I appreciated. I never told him because macho men never say anything nice to each other. That's part of it. But every year when I needed something, I would go to Bill and say, Bill, I need new uniforms. These uniforms are terrible. And he would say, hey, Burns, all right, is it in your budget? I said, no. What the hell, you just got new uniforms? I'd say, well, Bill, we really need them. He said, if it's not your budget, you don't get them. The next day, Bill would say, do you really need those uniforms? I'd say, yeah, Bill, we really need them. They're bad. So, geez. The next day he'd say, find out how much they cost. So I'd find out what they cost, and then about a day or two later he'd say, invariably, always, order the uniforms. And we got them. So I appreciated that. I never told him that because I didn't want him to think I liked them, I guess. That would have been a scandal at the time. I'd like to thank Danny McKevitt, who is related through marriage to my daughter Lori. Danny provided the video machines, and his company brought them over here and set them all up, all free of charge. And Danny McKevitt is a prince among men. He is just a peach of a guy. He had no reason to do that for me except he's a good man, and I appreciate it. One thing I would like to do is talk a little bit about the Burns kids because they were obviously slighted. You saw the 2 on the screen. I don't know what was wrong with them. They obviously have inherited my talent as a musician. But I've been proud of all 5 of them. And I'll start with the girls because the girls in the Burns family sometimes think that I favor boys. mainly because that's what I do for a living, and I frankly do not know how to communicate very well with females. Russ tried to teach me in the Denver trip, and well, he ended up with a hunchback with spots. He didn't do me any good. Down on the far left there, you see my Reddit. Now, some of you boys babysat for these kids. I know Harvey did. They would come over. We couldn't afford a babysitter. Geez, $5,000 a year and 5 kids under age 8. You couldn't afford anything. And of course, birth control was embarrassing. I mean, I didn't have enough guts to go in a drugstore. I still don't. Down on the far end here, Lori, my redheaded daughter, and her husband, Tom. I have 2 children. Lori's a nurse. She married an Irishman. You can't beat that. And they have 2 of the best little kids in the world. One of them's a redheaded boy. Was a big husky guy. Dushan would love him. Looks like a tackle or a guard. Next there, Bonnie. Stand up, Bonnie. My daughter, Bonnie. You can see Bonnie's in the family way. Many of you will be invited to the wedding in July. Only kidding. Bonnie's been married several years. She has an older son, Bonnie, and her husband, Steve. Steve is a lawyer and a guitar player, and I tried to overlook that. He's a talented musician, and they have a son, Josh, and another one on the way. Bonnie was a professional singer for 3 or 4 years, and was super. And I was as proud of Bonnie when she was singing as Jeff and Todd and Scott whenever they got a hit. She didn't realize that, but I would sit there and wave my fist. And I hope she knows that now. Next is Scott and Kay. Scott went to the United States Naval Academy, which is a great source of pride to me to this day. He graduated and served 7 years in the United States Navy as an officer and would probably still be there, except when he was a freshman at the Naval Academy. They called me from Bethesda Naval Hospital and said he had an incurable, inoperable kidney disease, which we had no idea that he had. And they were going to drop him from the Naval Academy because of the problem. They let him stay. He finished all 4 years. He finished the 7 years in the service. He puts up with kidney stones and so on, and never complains to me, and he is just one hell of a human being, and I'm proud of him. That's Scott and Kay right there. Next, Todd and his wife Debbie. This is Debbie's first baby right down there, Donnie Jr., which we're still arguing over. Todd played on Connie Kowal's Coley team, I think, right, Connie? He was about Connie's size then, a little bigger. Todd was always the little skinny, bony kid who sat on the end of the bench and never got to play in the Little League much, didn't play much in the Pony League. And, I don't think Connie even played him a whole lot, which caused me a little pain at times. But Connie always hated people taller than him. Todd came on the high school team. I think he made the freshman and sophomore team because his name was Burns. He was on the varsity as a junior and batted just a few times. As a senior, he made all conference and all area. He went to COD and quit his job, was all excited. You have to know Tom, he's an exuberant type. He has my bubbly personality. He was on the team at COD till the night before they went on their southern trip, and the coach said they had to eliminate one player and they left Todd home. He came home, as you might feel, slightly heartbroken. The team went without him, they came back, and then they decided, they found out they had 4 ineligible players on their trip, and they asked Todd to come back out. I can still remember him coming in the kitchen saying, "What should I do? I got my job back. What should I tell the coach?" And I said, "You know what you ought to tell him." He said, "I already told him." He left COD then and went to Northern Illinois, made the team, pitched a shutout against COD, which was nice. And Northern Illinois dropped baseball. So he was out of luck again. He then transferred to Northeast Missouri, and he was all excited, made the team there. And the night before they were leaving on their Texas Southern trip, he and another boy were declared ineligible because they were transfer students. So he called me and told me that he couldn't go on the Southern trip, but he said, "Don't get mad, I'm coming home, I don't really care." Well, I got mad, and I called the athletic director. It turned out that the coach had made a mistake, and that Todd really was eligible, but the coach called him in and said, "I've already told somebody else they're taking your place, and you can't go on the trip." Well, I called the athletic director and suggested that he do all kinds of unnatural things. And Todd went on the trip. He ended up being most inspirational player at 365. And I think one of the proudest days of my life, another father and I drove from Glen Ellen to Iowa State to watch Northeast Missouri play Iowa State, the first time they ever played a Division I team. And I think there were 4 or 5 Glenbard kids on that team. Kevin Fink coached there. Some of you remember Kevin. Jim Gazzola was on that team, Ricky Resch, Glenbard kids, a kid named Myers from Glenbard North. And I watched Todd hit a home run and a double in the first game. I watched him come in relief and win the second game. And that was worth $1 million to me right there. I would not trade that for a new Rolls Royce. To see a kid who was always a sub, never got to play and fought back to achieve that kind of success, and he's still playing. Was just inspirational to me, because coaches talk about if you keep trying hard and hang in there and work hard, you can make it, and he did it. And I've still got the letter. Jeff, the youngest boy here, went to the University of Denver, which is a common name here, and I'll explain why. He got a scholarship to play baseball in Denver. As a senior, he was all District 7 All-American as a second baseman and all academic All-American. He was won several scholar awards as a student, was captain of the team, most valuable player, and I flew out there to watch him play, and I watched him drive in 5 runs in a game, and I almost flew back to Glen Ellen without the airplane. Jeffy and his wife, Julie, are sitting right here. He met her at the University of Denver. So those are the 5. I was not around much when they were very young, so I have to give Marge most of the credit. She's been one heck of a mother to those kids. And did a very good job on it, and still does. And the family is very close, and I really think that that's important. I have an announcement about the baseball team. The baseball team is here tonight. They finished 3rd in the conference and did very well, considering that we had our best pitcher arrested on a cocaine charge and didn't pitch all season. Our number 2 pitcher did not come out for the team, and his mother called and said the reason he didn't come out is because I would not give him a weekend off last year to go attend a football scrimmage at Northwestern instead of pitching in a doubleheader. Last year, our number 1 pitcher, left-hander, came to me on a Friday night and said, "I'm not coming to the doubleheader anymore, I'm going to a Boy Scout meeting." I said, "Well, if you go to the Boy Scout meeting, give me your uniform." "You're kidding." He said, "Well, you're either on the team or you aren't." And if I would have looked the other way on that, I said, "You being honored?" He said, "No, I'm setting up chairs for a picnic." If I would look the other way on that, Tommy Wingeter and Tommy Moeller and Hermanick and the guys would have risen up out of nowhere and come and got me. There's no way. So they put up with some hardships, but the 18 boys we've got left are all the kind of boys that, if their name was Burns, would make me very happy. And I'd like to announce here, we are going to have 3 all-conference players, and I'd like to introduce them here. This is premature, and Blaze is going to get all over me, and I don't care. We get 3 all-conference players Monday night at the meeting, and those 3 all-conference players are going to be number 1, a left-handed pitcher who has had an elbow operation. He's had physical problems. He's had all kinds of obstacles to overcome. He's one of the gutsiest people you'll ever meet. Any of you old players would love him, and you ought to shake his hand. Brett Artizzoni, stand up back there, Brett. Ret is going to make the all-conference team. Also, on the all-conference team is going to be our right fielder, Jason Mechanic. Stand up, Jason. Jason is out of the old mold. He plays hard all the time. And sitting right next to him, the all-best first baseman in the West Suburban Conference, Vince Ferruno. Stand up, Vinny. These boys are good old-fashioned baseball players, and you've got to love them. I want to thank everybody who came here. I know a lot of you came a long way, and I appreciate that. Harvey flies all the way in from California. We've got boys here that have flown in from all, I say boys. Tommy Wingeter's still one of my boys, and my God, he looks older than me sitting over there. Only kidding, Tom. The kids on the team have heard me tell Tommy Wingeter stories. All Tommy did was hit 450 all the time, played the best second base you ever saw, keep his mouth shut, was a silent leader, and you could count on him. I mean, if you're going into war, you want Tommy right next to you. They don't come any better than that. And I've been spoiled, and that's hurt me over the last few years. I started off with Hermanick and Tommy Mulder, Davey Palmer, and Tommy Wingeter, and these people. I don't mean to overlook anybody. And we were first or second every year for a long time. And we ran into a dry spell, and I was spoiled. I thought this kind of talent would constantly be coming into Glenbard, and it goes in cycles. But I have to quote, and I haven't changed my standards that much, I hope. I'm a little easier now than I used to be. But still, I have to quote something that Bobby Knight said. I'm not a fan of Bobby Knight. I think he's one step removed from the poopy hatch at times. But he is a smart man. And I listened to him on Channel 11, and the interviewer said to him, Bobby, how can you handle coaching these young men, modern young men, after your days at West Point and the days when young men were different? And Bobby Knight said something I'll never forget. He said, young men and boys never change. What changes is what adults expect of those young men. And if the adults don't demand and expect and keep the standards high for young people, they're going to get exactly what they demand. And if we're going to look the other way and say, well, a few drugs are all right, or a little drinking is all right, and so on, then we're asking for some of the problems that society's got in this country. So my standards have stayed pretty much the same. The boys on this team are good boys. Doesn't mean everybody has to be acquired one. My God, Sproveer's over here. He's going, oh my God, he doesn't mean me. There are kids, I'm sure people sneak beers and stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people you can count on in the clutch. And I've been lucky over my whole career to be surrounded with that kind of people. I hope that I can keep in contact with most of the players because I like to be around baseball people. I'm a firm believer, despite what my brother says, that baseball is the game, and it is, baseball people are unique people. They love the game. Practice is fun. Batting practice is fun. Playing 10 games a week is not a burden on a baseball player. 15 wouldn't be too many. And it wasn't too many for me. One of the things I'm proud of, and there's not too many, I've never missed a game in 35 years, and I wouldn't miss a game unless I couldn't sit up. Because there's no place I'd rather be than on the baseball diamond with guys who want to hustle and play hard and do well. And I'm going to miss that badly. But this evening has certainly made it easier for me. You can see the emotion here, and my good friend Russie, Dave Kwiatkowski, and many of you out here, I don't want to slight anybody, but as I look out here, I see good, solid people. I want to conclude by doing something I've never done before in my life, and I haven't been drinking here. I want to say something nice about my kid brother. I've never done that, and I'm afraid in his condition he might keel over backwards. But all of you players have heard Uncle Bob's stories from me, including the Chihuahua story. He denies that. Actually, it was a St. Bernard, I think. But Uncle Bobby was an all-state football player, and he was one tough, mean football player. And the kids in the team have heard me talk about him know that there's always been a touch of pride in what I say about him, whether he believes that or not. I was proud of his accomplishments as an athlete in high school, and he should be too. And although we have a fight virtually every time we get together, he is my brother, and I'm glad he is. He's here with his family tonight, and I'm glad he is. But you can't beat family and old friends. Sitting at the same table, Phil Disher. Phil Disher and I have been buddies since we were in the womb in the same neighborhood, 2 houses apart. Phil was supposed to be on a fishing trip today. He gave it up to come here. Came a long way to be here, and I appreciate that. And it's sort of fun being at your own wake and being alive to enjoy it. I thank you all for coming now that the bar's going to be open. Oh, geez. You better hurry up. Did they close it? Oh, geez. Probably good that they did. Thanks again for coming. I know a lot of you spent a lot of money and a lot of time to get here. And I can assure you that nobody ever appreciated it more. And just to prove, see now, Scott, I am not weeping, and I'm getting right through this. I sincerely mean it. When I've said before, I don't have 3 sons. I have about 500. Some of them I occasionally like to kick in the butt, and they have. But I think most of them know if they needed help or were in a pile, that I'd be there next to them trying to help them. And I'm going to miss Lombard West baseball, something fierce, but I'm not going to miss the players here because I'm going to keep seeing them whenever I can. And once again, thanks for coming.